This conference will now be recorded.
All ready down there? Good?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. As always, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We do have a quorum. We do need to adopt an agenda. The only two additions that I've got so far is 11A, and that's Resolution 2023-6, and that's a Orange Madison MOU kind of update. And then 14 under Information and Correspondence, that's an update on the Rother case. Anybody else have anything we need to add to the agenda?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody? What would you all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, let's start with public comment. Nick, come on up and talk to us.
Nick McDowell, today I completed my 4-year term on the Board of Social Services. And I just want to report to you that I'm very satisfied, very gratified with the excellent work they've done, in particular the job that Valerie has done, oftentimes under very difficult circumstances. I think the county is very fortunate, and Charlotte can verify this, for the quality of people we have in that department.
Yep.
It's been a real pleasure working with you.
Thank you for your service. Other public comment? Yes, sir. Come on up, Mr. Fisher.
I'm Mike Fisher.
But anyway, I'm Mike Fisher. I'm from but I'm also from Post 157 Madison. I just wanted to go over some things that the Post is doing, some events. We invite you to please participate as much as you can during this Memorial Weekend and afterwards. The Legion is proud to announce we're going to sponsor Baseball League. More details to follow, but we put the money up, so it's going to be a Madison County team with the American Legion. You're gonna see the flags going up on Main Street Thursday or Friday. We're gonna coordinate that with the sheriff's office. This Thursday, Skyline Cap at the American Legion is having a future with broadband and computer access for everyone. That should be very interesting. I have flyers for all of these. I'll put them somewhere. We used to have a table back here, but I guess they cut that out of the budget. But anyway,
We're saving on legs, yes, so go ahead.
okay, breakfast. We have a breakfast, our monthly breakfast for fundraiser, May the 27th from 7 to 10. It's a great way for us to raise some money, and it's also great food. And most people have a good time out there. Even Cardi comes once in a while.
Yeah.
Cardi. That night, on the May 27th, from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m., the Legion's going to be hopping with the Bristols from Baltimore. It's a British invasion band, live music, rock tribute songs from 60s, 70s, and 80s. So pass the word out, and that should be a great time.
What's the cover?
$10. Cardi, I'll pay you. I'll take care
Oh,
of you.
no, I pay my own way, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
You're not taking me down that rabbit hole.
Okay, on May the 29th at 11 a.m., the War Memorial Building, downtown Madison. We have a speaker, Dr. David Lieber. He's from, he works up in Washington, but he lives on Tatum School Road. He's going to give a speech on Army intelligence during World War I and where it relates to today and how it saves lives. So we really love to have folks come out for that. The choir, bel cantos, Madison Choral Society, and guest singers, directed by Mr. Carr, is going to be, it's R. Carr, it could be either way. But anyway, we would love to have every one of y'all come, all 5 of you. It would be great. You're invited. And I would like to thank the county administrator. He's been out there to make sure that we have electric and grass is going to be mowed. And the flag, this county's bought a brand new $450 flag. 2 of them, in fact. So when that one gets tattered, we'll be able to continue. And the last thing I'd like to join us on Saturday, June the 17th, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Veterans and Disabled First Responders at Camp Shenandoah Springs. That's at 740 Stagecoach Lane. We're going to be doing some fishing, eating some hamburgers. And like I say, I'll leave these somewhere, some flyers. And I'm just proud to get up here and talk about what the American Legion does with veterans. And I thank you folks, Board of Supervisors, for keeping this county. I'm still proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. That's quite the calendar.
Yeah, cranked it up a notch.
Yeah, that's stepping up. Other public comment. Other public comment. All right, we're gonna do it like 5 more times.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Yes,
may.
sir.
Mr. Fisher, if you at least leave a copy with me, I'll make sure we put it on the community board outside of the auditorium here. Thank you, sir.
All right. We do have a consent agenda from 5/9/23. We've got the minutes. Anybody have corrections, thoughts, motion? What do y'all want to do?
Now, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We do have a special appearance. Superintendent Kenny and Mr. Fry going to talk to us about Shenandoah National Park. And we've got Bruce here as well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The main purpose that we wanted to give you an update on the Old Rag pilot program that we ran, but I do have a couple of comments I want to cover before we get to that, if you don't mind. First, thanks for having me, and I appreciate the partnership with the county. So just on visitation as a general pattern, 2022 kind of ended sort of going back to a little bit of a normal as far as numbers. You know, we were right about 1.5 million visits before COVID. We spiked at about 1.7 in 2020, stayed up there like 1.6 in 21. We came back down to about 1.4, 1.5 in 22. We ended the year a little rough spot with some ice storms. We got caught, had a lot of trees come down in the ice up on the mountain. We were closed from mid-December into, I think it was February, we got it back open and started getting the road back open in waves. We cleared, I think, somewhere in the order of 500 to 800 trees off the drive. We spent a couple $100,000 in overtime. We had support from 12 other parks. People came in. It was a tough time with holidays and the end of the year. PATC, the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, which does a lot of work in the park, stepped up. They have a lot of trained chainsaw sawyers. They gave us over 1,000 hours reopening the road as an organization. People came from all over. Some of them were driving from Maryland and such to come and work in the park to help get the park back open, so we're real proud of that. Visitation kind of coming into 23, so we started kind of slow in the winter months. April, we saw with this nice spring weather, we saw a really strong April for visitation, and so, and I haven't seen the May, May, we're still working on those numbers as May progresses. You may have seen in the news, we had a small fire, a vehicle fire at Thornton Gap entrance station it was in March, April timeframe. It was in spring break. I know I was in line actually as a visitor coming into the park that Saturday. We saw the fire before the fire trucks got there, but young person pulled up to the gate, car started smoking, we got him out of there, got our staff out of there. Unfortunately, it damaged our building there, so things might be a little slower getting in Thornton Gap until we get the buildings fixed. We're working on that. Luckily, nobody was hurt, but just so you're aware of that. You may have seen in the news, we just finished a search and rescue effort. Unfortunately, it ended in a fatality on Sunday. We found the young man. Luckily for his family, we got some closure, but we had a 5-day search effort just recently in the park. That, unfortunately, as I mentioned, the young man was not still alive when we found him, but we did recover him, so that's good for the family. So we're going to jump into the. We have a little bit of a PowerPoint for you just to cover the Old Rag pilot program. I don't know. Next slide, please. So, Old Rag is one of the most popular hiking destinations in the park. You guys are all aware of that. It's right here in your backyard or your front yard, whichever you want to look at it. I mean, it gets ranked in like Outside Magazine, all that. It's one of those must hikes in the eastern United States. I like to say it was getting a little bit of love to death, but we were trying to figure out a way to manage it, still provide a good experience, a good backcountry type experience up on that mountain without crowding. We had hour and a half wait in what's known as the chute, people backing up, and then we had people starting to try to figure out ways around it in the chute and getting themselves in trouble and things like that. So next slide, please. 2019, we did a study. We brought in some folks. They did the work and really looked at what was going on. They really documented the crowding experience. We also know we had a huge amount.
Participants who are participating online, please mute yourself during this period of the presentation. Thank you. Sorry, Superintendent King, please.
So there was a study. It basically showed we had numbers, I think, 1,200 to 1,300 people up on the mountain. So we moved forward with a pilot. And next slide, please. We moved it forward with a pilot in 2022 with the goals of improving visitor experience, looking at visitor safety, and minimizing the impacts to the resources. Ticketing system went into place in March 1, went through November 30, 275 days we sold tickets. We set a cap of 800 tickets. and we charged $1 per ticket. The park did not, that ticket, that dollar went to actually recreation.gov, which is the company that does the reservations and sells the tickets online. It just basically covered their administrative costs. And we limited the tickets to four tickets per party. And then I'm going to turn it over here to Eric, who actually oversaw the analysis of the data that we learned.
All right, thanks, Pat. Thank you all for having me. Yeah, go ahead and hit the next slide. So this is going to be a very kind of general overview of the data, and more detailed data can be found in the summary report, and that's online, and we'll have a link to that at the end of this slideshow. But overall, you can see we sold over 95,000 tickets, and we had trail counters out there as well, kind of corroborate those numbers, and we counted just over 86,000. So there is a discrepancy there. Those counters aren't 100% accurate, but we do calibrate those counters. That discrepancy, we could tell that some people were kind of blocking tickets. If they were here for the weekend, you know, they might have bought Friday, Saturday, Sunday, checked weather, and then hiked on one of those days. So that might be one of the reasons why we have a little bit of discrepancy there. But overall, 95,000 tickets. Go ahead and hit the next slide. Now, out of those 275 days from March 1st to November 30th, only 20 of those days were completely sold out, meaning 800 tickets sold, and then no other hikers or tickets were available. 14 of those days in the fall, busy fall season, and then also 6 in the spring. Summer, we didn't see a sold out day. It's not to mean that we weren't busy. There were days that were 790, 795, but none of those days hit the exact 800 or completely sold out. Go ahead, next slide. Just general overall monthly use. Again, you can see the peaks in April and October. October by far the largest number of hikers, and then April 2nd, and then March was the least out of all the months that we had the pilot program going from March to November. Go ahead. So, kind of as predicted, you know, Saturday is going to be the busiest day, and throughout the whole week, Saturdays accounted for over 30% of overall use. So 30% of overall use just on one day. And then you can see the lowest Wednesdays, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then just gradually increasing as you get closer to the weekend. So parking was one of the things that we were somewhat concerned about. We have two kind of official lots there right next to the trailhead, and then we have an overflow lot down the road just a little bit. And throughout the whole ticketing season from March 1st to November 30th, even on those busiest days, we had parking available for all 800 ticket holders. So that was a good thing. We didn't have to, we didn't overflow the overflow lot. And we only needed that lot for 47 days. So that was a good thing, definitely. Next slide. And so, as Pat said, one of our goals was to increase visitor safety. And with just 1 year, it's really hard to kind of really extrapolate some hard numbers or some trends. But so we wanted to just add this. So our 5-year average from 2017 to 2021, you know, we had 16 assists and 24 rescues, park staff, in the Old Rag area and on Old Rag trails in the summit. This past year, 22 assists and 20 rescues. We're going to continue to monitor that, of course, and see if if we do see a trend, a decreasing or increasing trend. But with this system in place, we're hoping to see a decrease in these numbers, because you go through the reservation system, they get good, solid information about the hike, about what to expect, what to bring, things like that. So hopefully we see a little bit of decrease in that. And next slide, I think that might be it. Yeah, so any questions? Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, Chairman Jackson, you asked about concerns that we heard from the public. The biggest concern we got was related to the technology there at the trailhead. As many of you know, that area of Nethers Road, it's a void for internet access. We have very limited access. We're trying to work on it with the advancements of Starlink and things like that. We're trying to get that technology in place. But that was one of the biggest complaints, is people get there, it was also the first year, so they didn't know they had to have a ticket, some of them when they got there, or at least that's what they were telling us. And so then they'd have to go find cell service, and as you know, depends on which provider you have, how far you have to go back to find a cell signal to actually buy the tickets online. So that was probably the biggest complaint. From a couple of residents that we kind of monitor with down there on Nethers, they were very pleased with how it reduced traffic congestion on Nethers. We were not out on the road doing traffic control very often. As you know, in the past, we were dealing with that and backing traffic up. So if you're a resident down there, that's not what you want to. That's not why you moved to that part of the world. Obviously, we had some complaints of people that just didn't like it. It's a new rule, new process, those types of things. They don't want to pay the dollar, those types of things. But overall, we had a lot of support. We just closed public comment. We gave a presentation to the public, a virtual presentation, showed them, Eric gave a presentation, a longer version of this presentation. We just got that public comment closed on Friday. We're trying to take a look at it. We're running the pilot again through 23 with the idea that we'll put something into place in 24. Too soon to say exactly how that's going to work out, but we saw positive impacts of this program as far as the congestion on the mountain, dealing with some of the parking issues, dealing with some of the neighbor issues. So in my at least initial glance at this, it seems like a good step forward, and then we'll try to figure it out from there.
So the senior citizens are the ones that have the tickets. Do they have to come in to make sure that they have the liquor?
So if you're talking about the senior pass is the park entrance fee. That gets you into the park for a lifetime after you obtain that permit. Everybody that is going up on Old Bragg under the pilot had to get a ticket for the $1.
Mr. Bowman?
I was just wondering how you counted the hikers that actually I mean, do we have a game camera on or something like that?
So not camera, but counters. So they're,
People are counting.
no, actually, devices, they're infrared, and as the beam gets crossed, that counts. So, again, as I said, it's not 100% accurate, but we did have a trail camera on Ridge Trail going up, and then also on Saddle Trail on the backside. So looking at both those, and then we can determine how many hikers.
And I'm sure there's a difference between an assist and a rescue. What's the difference?
That's a good question.
Depends
So,
how much I cry,
pretty
then
much.
I may be a rescue.
Pretty much. Yeah, so a rescue is more medical attention, whereas assist might be just providing water, something like that. But yeah.
Eric, how many parking spots are there in 1 and 2?
Yeah, I'll stop. So it's all in report.
150.
There you go.
150,
Yeah.
1 plus 2, 150.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have questions? Gavin, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Anybody from the board have questions? No, I think, I talked to Superintendent Kenny before, and it sounds like we need to have a meeting with Brian and Gavin and Jonathan, and our people that are doing emergency radio stuff, so we can see how the park will fit in on that model. The other component, and I think I can say, we did not hear any complaints about the ticketing program, and that's amazing. I'm shocked you all put that out for national comments. I'm sure you got some very good ones, and some other ones. But we just didn't hear it, and normally on something like this, we should have heard it, and it kind of, I think, will signify it was a success, and it kind of, to some extent, it should kind of preserve what the reason people live up there and the people that come to visit it. That's kind of where I see things. Anybody, you got questions over here?
No, I see Don Weekly sitting out
Yeah.
there, so I was wondering whether we could utilize the Sirius store, the Etland store for the tickets. If somebody goes up there and can't get a ticket, they come back down or whatever, but I don't know how Don would react to that. Would you be,
That would make a lot of people
Yeah,
Closest place to be here, internet service.
right.
And when you get there, the ground race doesn't store. So that's like 10 miles from our store to there. And then
Yeah.
5 miles or 10 miles round trip. Then you gotta get back up there, and you know, there's like 20 plus miles.
Right.
If we had something set up where they could buy the ticket there, you know, we'd be more appreciative.
Like I said,
Yeah.
Some customers come in and, you may not gotta have a ticket.
we're trying to get a Starlink system working there that would have point-of-sale system.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, I'm also trying to get people to go in the store. You know.
Understand.
One thing that I understood about the tickets, like if I go to use my service, they can only buy 4 tickets off for that whole day. If they had to order, you can extend it a little bit, you know, that might be a possibility, so we have to start about it.
Okay. We'll see what we can do, Carter.
Sure.
Other questions? All right, Chuck.
If the dollar ticket is going to the admin cost, jack it up to $2, since the park was.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the decision points we do have to make on what will, if we move forward with this, would we add a little bit of cost that would come back to the park to help support it? Under a pilot, the way the Park Service, when we're doing these studies like this, they won't let us do that. But thank you for that feedback.
You'd like to have 25,000.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else? All right, Mr. Coates.
I guess, I'm trying to understand your question. One thing where, if we get connectivity there, this is another positive, if we can get connectivity there, we could actually start having some staff that are duty stationed at Old Rag. Instead of, right now, they're driving over from our headquarters building every day, because they need that connectivity to make their systems work. So in the future, we might be looking at having actually some staff based at Old Rag, so they could potentially end up living in your community here in Madison, which would be a nice,
Would be. Well,
thank you.
thank you all very, very much for coming. We can't tell you how much we appreciate it. And
Anytime, really appreciate you taking the time to let us give you an update as well. Thanks.
very good. Thanks, gentlemen. All right, good. Now let's do some public hearings. Let's start with the sign ordinance amendment. Yeah, give me a sec. No, that's more than fine. Sign ordinance amendment. Let's start. Mr. Weekly, you want to go through, before we
Yes,
start the public hearing?
I'll cover a little ground, and I would also like to give time to our council to add anything they wish. Tonight, it's been scheduled for a public hearing for a sign ordinance amendment. This discussion is kind of going on, evolved probably over the last 3 months or so. And since the renovation of this administrative campus, there have been third-party signs placed in the grass area without either proper removal and/or without permission. And I want to be clear, third-party signs, it can be anything from, I think I used before, if you got junk, you got cash, or it could be political, it could be anything, third-party signs. The current request is for the Board of Supervisors to support a sign ordinance that be placed in effect to prevent the use of third-party signs at the administrative campus here at 414. The proposed wording is to only allow county, state, and federal signage to be placed at the Madison County Administrative Campus. The amendment would allow all political signs to be erected on the premises of Criggersville Elementary School on the day of any general election and shall be immediately removed after Election Day. The Madison County Electoral Board, as well as the registrar, they have been involved in this process as it has evolved in the drafting of the language. The county attorney did provide an ordinance amendment for the Board of Supervisors and the public to review. And again, the public hearing has been scheduled for tonight. I believe there's at least a couple members of the board who have raised some questions. Should we look beyond the grounds of 414? I'd like to go ahead and be a perfect segue to turn it over to legal, but we're ready to field any questions maybe might be appropriate, Mr. Chairman,
All right.
for staff before opening it to the public hearing.
Yeah, and I think we need to go down a couple paths. Cordy, I hate to cut you real quick, but I'm gonna need your opinion afterwards. Cordy identified that this is only, this ordinance amendment only identifies the site here at 414. I think that it probably should cover county property. You got words to say on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, I thought that's where we were going when we started this. It would be all county property, so I guess, I'm sorry, if I missed seeing this earlier until, this morning when I was looking at it, I was like, oops, it's only this building, so.
Are you, I think we open it up to the board. I think the process has to go, is we're gonna do a public hearing on this tonight. People are here to talk about this. Or maybe they're here to talk about this. I tend to agree with Cardy that I think it's all county property, excluding Kriglersville, which is already specified in the ordinance amendment. What do y'all think down there?
I agree.
All county or? Y'all fine with that? Sean Gregg, go ahead.
I was gonna suggest the same thing. When I was initially asked about this, we were worried about the fact that people vote in the registrar's office and the possibility of a lot of political signage. That was my focus. Candidly, it had not occurred to me that, there would be a problem anywhere else. But we can certainly, and I think it is appropriate to ask for public hearing on this. But the next ordinance I would anticipate would be one that prohibits signage on all county property, which would include the school system property and any other properties that the county owns, presumably the transfer station site, the animal shelter, and all the other sites that we have.
If we proceed with the public hearing on this evening, if we do not take action on it, we could always come back and re-advertise with the updated language, addressing all county property and doing another public hearing, and then we could adopt that potentially. Is that correct?
That is correct, and there are two ways you can do it. One is you just reject this ordinance. You don't really need to do that because you're not required to take a vote on it on the night of the public hearing. It could be that what you do is the board passes a motion directing the county attorney, who I'm happy to say is likely to be Hannon Wright, handling this moving forward, to make sure that the language meets what the board wants. I do think it's important to have a public hearing for anyone who's interested in this issue, and then they'll have another chance to comment on the expanded ordinance.
Everybody good with that process? All right, anybody else have any other comments before I open up to the public? All right, to the public on the, yes, sir, Mr.
How is this
McDowell.
enforceable, and how do you notify the public of the restriction?
All right, fellas.
Well, it's enforceable the way anything else is enforceable. What is likely to happen is if somebody sees a sign on property that is not authorized, it will simply be removed. And then the other part of it is, particularly as it relates to political signs, it is the same issue. There is not a requirement that someone be allowed to post a political sign anywhere they want. And remember, this is property that belongs to the county. What I'm going to call the next ordinance, the one we're likely to pass, will, confirm those restrictions. And, in terms of what the violation would be for this, candidly, we haven't talked about that. That might be something we look into in terms of repeat offenders in terms of any signs. The big problem with signs, obviously, is identifying the person who erected them or posted them. It's just too easy. If you've got a staple gun and a solid piece of wood, you can put a sign just about anywhere, meaning it's hard to catch people red-handed, so to speak. So the real enforcement mechanism is simply the removal of the sign.
That and you go get those, we pull them up and use those wire things in your garden. You can cover up your beans and keep the cutworms off of them.
That is not what people use those signs for. Normally there's a circle with a dot in the middle of them. The enforcement mechanism of this is we'll just keep taking them up, and signs are expensive. I would get tired of paying for signs. Other public comment on this? Other public comment? I am glad to see that we have people watching us. That's a big start for us. Anybody making comments on that one, Alan? Oh. All right,
Mr. Chairman, an appropriate motion at this point might be to refer this back to the county attorney to develop a new ordinance.
absolutely.
And then vote on that, and I think that addresses the order of business.
Agree.
Scheduled for tonight.
Agree.
So moved.
I'd like to say,
Oh, hold on.
big signs everywhere. I mean, I don't know what county property is. I mean, you go to cracks and they don't take them up for much, they're still antlers and leaves are everywhere. So I don't know, I think unless you're gonna hire somebody to go pick them up, and this would be their full-time job, this ordinance is like a lot of them. It's like, any cars in the front yard. We don't enforce that. But anyway, I don't see, I know why you're doing it, but it's not gonna be enforced.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to that
Sure.
issue. Political signs, because of the First Amendment implications, the county is powerless to do anything with those. There was a Supreme Court case, I think it was 4 years ago, I can't remember the specific name of the case. But time restrictions on those signs have been declared to be unconstitutional. So we get to enjoy those signs through the next election cycle. The difference with this ordinance is the fact that we will now be enforcing it particularly on county-owned property.
All right, back to the public hearing. Other public comment. All right, now to the board. I think the real thing is all those signs look trashy, like all of them. We just heard from Superintendent Kinney about why people are coming here. I know why a lot of people live here. Looks like a bunch of trash. And if it's on county property, we'll pick them up and throw them away. And that'll get to people's pocketbooks pretty quickly. What would y'all like to do with this? Anybody have other comments, thoughts, motions? Yes, sir, please.
Mr. Chairman, this just goes back to my original concerns about the First Amendment issues with the signs. Hypothetically speaking, suppose that a candidate forum or debate were held on county property during the election season. I assume that rule would apply to signs being restricted at those events too. Am I correct?
It would be, and we can fashion language in the ordinance. Remember, the ordinance hasn't been written yet, but we can fashion language in the ordinance. Now, as a practical matter, having, not for Madison County, but for Orange County, I've moderated probably 60 candidate forums, and I have never seen candidates posting signs at those, at those candidate forums.
It is, it's a good point. And the one I think of was it Rural Madison? Isn't that the one? Does it at the high school every year, every 2 years, I guess. I would think that we'd want to fashion some type of language to allow them to put up a sign or to hand out signs there, and move on from that. I think that would come with a request to the county, and we would make that exemption. Is that doable?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I
Hold
think
on.
I probably, just to make it easier to administer, suggest language to the effect that on the day of a candidates forum or debate, whatever you want to call it, that signs would be allowed from, sometime in the afternoon until that evening.
But you think that potentially the potential next ordinance amendment could have language to specify that?
I believe so.
Very good. All right, I hope y'all don't mind, but I'm going back to the public. Mr. McDowell?
Is there a possibility of considering the idea of prohibiting these third-party signs without the prior consent of the county government? There may be some kinds of signs that make sense, like advertising an upcoming thing at the library,
It's not county property.
What about Hoover Ridge with all activities up there?
That's not a third-party sign, is it?
It would depend on what the sign was for. I mean, if it's for a dining establishment or something, it would clearly be a third-party sign. But if
What
it's
about music in
just
the park?
directional signs to get to an event hosted by the county, I mean, it would be exempt because it's a county event.
Does that answer your question, Nick?
Not 100%.
Yeah, I agree with that, but, we're not
Well,
gonna get 100%.
the idea is, I mean, the county has the absolute right
Yeah,
to
that's
do
right.
any of this. You know, this ordinance would apply to other organizations.
All right, Mr. Coates,
But I just want you to think
Yeah.
about unintended consequences of a
Agreed.
blanket prohibition.
agreed.
Having worked in the past with VDOT, when they saw a sign on the road and stayed there too long, they went and took it up. And it was really an embarrassing thing, because some of these signs were beautiful. And at times, we'd get a call, how do we get our sign back? If you come there and pick it up, you can have it back, but don't put it back on VDOT's property. And they make rounds quite often to clear their signs.
That's correct.
And if you see one that's a bother to you, or maybe even sight distance that is sitting right at your driveway, you can't see how to get on the road, give them a call and they'll come and take care of that.
Thank you. All right,
I just
Chuck.
want to say Green just passed an ordinance for the zoning department.
We don't have a big enough zoning department.
We don't want to
We've got Mooney.
Yeah, we've got a maintenance
yeah.
department that visits all our
Everyone.
properties on a regular basis.
All right, what would you all like to do here? I think Mr. Gregg has made a recommendation saying that we can move to amend.
Yeah, well, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we task the county administrator with writing an ordinance for a new sign ordinance.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, let's go to the next one. Article 4, Section 4.3 amendment. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Sure, my mic's on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this ordinance amendment, public hearing has been scheduled for tonight. This is specifically addressing the 3 acres per use in A1 zoning that exists in Article 4, Section 4.3 area regulations. The current zoning ordinance for area regulations provides for the minimum lot area for permitted uses shall be 3 acres. Staff feels additional language or a revision to the existing ordinance may help clarify that Article 4, Section 4.3. Their current request is for the Board of Supervisors to clarify or consider the amendment provided in your board packet. So tonight is your public hearing. Mr. Gregg or Mr. Wright, do either of you gentlemen have anything to add?
Yeah, very briefly. You'll recall we had some discussion with the Planning Commission as to how many acres was necessary for a use. Historically, the county has always interpreted that it requires 3 acres per use. So in other words, if you have a business and a house, you need 6 acres for that, depending on what the use was. That had been the interpretation, certainly at the time I arrived here. My understanding, having had conversations with our previous zoning administrator, is that that was the way the ordinance was always read. Apparently, some confusion has developed over the past year or two with regard to that reading. The idea of this is to clarify so that there's no question that it is 4-3. The minimum lot area for permitted uses shall be 3 acres. All dwellings shall have a required minimum of 3 acres per dwelling. So if you've got another use, it would cover it. Now, the question that inevitably comes up is, what about a garage? Well, if it's a garage that's a business, then that is obviously not part of a house. But a garage that is part of a house, it does not require 6 acres.
Questions, comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, I do
Please.
have one
Yes, sir.
point of clarity. So the previous ordinance that we will, that was presented as draft, what I just would say for tonight, if you so choose to vote on this ordinance for the Section 4.3, is to adjust the numbering sequence. So this would actually become 2023-2, and staff will make that edit should this ordinance be considered for a vote. So just a point of clarity, and when we bring back the sign regulation ordinance amendment, it'll have the new numbering sequence.
Absolutely. All right, questions or comments on this? All right, two to the public. Public hearing is open for an amendment to Article 4, Section 4.3, specifying 3 acres per use, which is what we've been doing forever. Public comment. Alan? We've lost people. All right. No public comment. Back to the board. What would y'all like to do? Yes, sir.
He is just saying that Ligon, our county planner, has said that a lot with over 3+ acres could potentially be okay. That is Kevin McKinney's comment.
And that's exactly why we're here.
For a second house, yes, that is, this is, thank you for the comment, Kevin. I think we've been enforcing it this way forever. It's a good land use direction. I don't see any reason to change it, other than just this clarifies what the board and the county's direction is. What else, y'all, anybody else have anything to say? What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve ordinance 2023-2.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. Glad we cleared that up. All right, now, next public hearing. Radio tower easement and lease agreement. This is not, at this point, we're gonna do this 2 more times, basically. It's going through the planning commission, at their workshop, or did go through. And then also, we're gonna do this as a joint hearing on, June 7th. Mr. Weekly, what would you like to add to this?
Just basically, for tonight, it's the radio tower easement and lease agreements. Certainly, as the chairman just stated, we have went through a few workshops, went through actually a BZA meeting last night for variance for fall paths and so forth. So the easements that you will be considering tonight, it goes through Mr. Blake Yow's property over through the Ayler's property to the proposed tower site. So I'll just be brief to my board report that's in the packet and on the screen. Over 2 years ago, the Madison County Board of Supervisors approved an emergency services radio project. You selected Motorola as the service provider / vendor. And this project consists of not only upgrading existing towers, but also called for 2 new towers, to which one of those you've already had installed at Hoover Ridge Park. Many of you have seen that. That is a lattice-style tower. The new proposed site will actually, being considered now, will be a monopole tower structure. Based on approval of that project, you have identified 2 former sites. Those had some topographical and budgetary challenges, some negative feedback from the public. Therefore, you directed staff to canvass the area. We went back, looked in additional areas of the village of Etland. We're thankful for many citizens who came out at a prior public hearing to either encourage or provide additional sites for considerations. Those have been vetted, and you have pretty much landed on a potential site, again, that you will consider during a joint public meeting on June the 7th at 7 p.m. in this boardroom for potential final approval. So again, Mr. Bear, if you will put up the public hearing notice that went out, that'll give me a little more description for the public and the board. So the easements that we are talking about is to inquire an easement from Brent and Carmen Ayler for ingress and egress and across their property, which is off of Route 643. That's for the fall path, excuse me. We also desire to enter in an exclusive long-term lease of a portion of Emmett Ayler Jr. and Connie Ayler's property in order to install a federally licensed communication system. And it says specifically a cell tower for both for government and potential commercial use, but I do want to emphasize this project began and has primarily been emphasized for government purposes, so the radio system. This tower will be constructed per our zoning ordinance, depending on the height, which this tower has been set as a proposed height of 174 feet. We'll have to accommodate what I call mast for multiple cell service providers. If they choose to locate, the county has to accommodate co-location. Additional, so that's the lease, and additional easements were required through Tommy and Terry Foster's for a fall path, as well as to acquire an easement from Daniel and Sarah Yao for ingress and egress over those properties. Staff has personally met with those mentioned. We're appreciative of their cooperation. However, as you know, this requires public input to make sure, as the county always operates in an open and transparent forum, this is the information being considered tonight. So staff is not recommending a vote. This is merely for public input, and certainly you will have a chance at another public hearing on June the 7th. And I'll stand by for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Jonathan or Mr. Gregg or Mr. Hannon? Any comments? All right, to the public. The public hearing is open on the radio tower easement and lease agreement at the location proposed. Mr. Coates, Alan, get him a microphone, would you?
Has the balloon test been made?
Yes, sir.
The balloon test has, it's not for this packet, but I did get confirmation from Mr. Gordon, and we will have it on the June 7th. Mr. Coates, if I can get your email, I'll be happy to email you in advance. But we do have those photos now that show that monopole. And what they do for the general public, when they fly the balloon test,
2-3 weeks ago?
when they
2 or
fly,
3 weeks ago.
when they fly the balloon test, and it takes a little bit afterwards for them, but they take that image, so they get rid of the orange balloon that you saw flying around, and they overlay that computer image of what the tower would look like. So those photos, they were taken from different vantage points around that area. I think Hughes River, Champlain, Emmett, I mean, there was Churchill. They took many pictures. So they take that photo and they overlay with the tower. So that will be in the packet for June 7th. But again, anyone who'd like to have it in advance, I got that from Mr. Gordon today, and I'm thankful that was made available even though he's on vacation. I'd be happy to share that in advance. But if not, it will be in the packet on June 7th.
That is positive looking at this point in time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is extremely, I should say, less visible than before. Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy if you want me to plug in and throw it up on the screen if you'd like to. Alan, do I have control? All right, give me 1 second to bring
Yeah,
up the
actually, it
file.
was done April 25th, because Don reminded me it was 8 months till Christmas, right?
We know what you people are looking forward to.
The reason I came tonight was to represent our church and cemetery, because as you know it, at the first meeting, you had a big crowd here. But to pass on, I have no objection to the new site, or from anybody that I've heard from, of that organization. And I'm sure you can understand why we were here. We didn't want a tower adjoining our church property. I mean, there were so many pretty places in the area that this could be done. And where I'm supposed the tower's gonna go, it will be in the front of a beautiful mountain. You'll see the mountain behind it. But before, the tower was in front of the old rag, and that's why we objected to that. But I want to thank you for the supervisors and the planning and Brian for all the work they have done along the way.
Thank you, Mr. Coates.
So I'm going to enlarge this, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, you
just
have
a
to.
little bit. I need to make sure I keep my notes, though, because it tells me when it's visible and not. If you look in this is from the cemetery, so if you just look at the little hand there, it makes me think of Hamburger Helper, but that's your tower overlay, so you can see it's visual there, but I'm not sure many locations unless it's further down the road, it would not, that would make it not visible, but it was visible at the, from the cemetery. This is taking from the Etland Community Church viewing south, so you'll see a little less of it, but still see it there. This is a picture from the Etland Country Store. You can see it back in this area. Continue on here.
I have very good eyes. I cannot see it in any of these pictures. I mean, maybe.
So I cannot see it here from this intersection of Etland Road and Emmett Road.
Oh, there you go.
You can see it
There it is.
from there. But if you're looking at most, I think, people's vistas, is they're looking at Old Rag, but you can see it from that vantage point. Here, I cannot make that out.
So far.
And the locations are listed there. Barnett, Champlain Road. I can't see it unless that's what this is. I'm not sure, but it's very hard to see. Tower not visible from this location. It's listed at the intersection of Champlain Road and FT Valley Highway. And then the intersection of Hughes River Road and FT Valley Highway. Tower not visible from this location. And this is at the Barns of Madison County. It's a venue here in Madison for those who want to get married. Check it out. Pay into your tot. But this location, there's a note, tower not visible from this location. I can assure you the tower prior, when we flew the balloon test, we saw them in probably 85% of these photos. Tower not visible. This is at the Fry property at 167 Churchill Road. Tower not visible from the intersection of Churchill Road and Whippoorwill Road. This is viewing west. Tower is not visible from this location, which is the Foster property at 615 Churchill Road, viewing southwest. Tower is not visible from the Wood property, which is located at 516 Churchill Road. And what we did, some of these locations are probably thinking, why did they pick that? Well, we took public feedback from our last public hearing, made notes of addresses to make sure those were vantage points above other things that we took into consideration. And this picture is from the Czar property at 440 Churchill Road. It doesn't say that it's not visible, but I'm not seeing it, but just for clarity, they did not say that it was not visible. So I can't make it out, but. And those were all the photos, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Thank you for those. All right. Other,
Cannot guarantee that. We'll try. My executive assistant's on maternity leave. So we'll get those up there soon, but it will be for the packet on June 7th. And I'll be happy to email you this file.
all right, other public comment. Other public comment. Public comment. All right. Back to the board. We're gonna do this again on June 7th. Other than the pictures looking beautiful, I hope we can see it a little bit better in those. Hopefully not. But thank you very much, y'all. Old business, Kriglersville Swinging Bridge update. Mr. Gregg?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the county has determined that this is largely a private effort. The county has simply been coordinating this. Bruce Clark has been representing the people sort of tasked with preserving one of the two bridges. I do not have any information about the second bridge, but the one that they are trying to save. They have been negotiating with the two landowners who would be, or excuse me, the three landowners, I guess, who would be affected by it. A couple of issues that may come up, and again, the county is unlikely to have much input on this. A fairly obvious question is parking. You know, if you're going to use the bridge, unless you walk to it, you know, you're going to have to walk from somewhere. And there's been some discussion about trying to create at least one parking space convenient to the property. The other issue in terms of the mechanics of this, what we anticipate, what Mr. Clark, that is, and I anticipate, is that the owners of the property would make a donation to this foundation, would have what they call a reverter clause, so that if the foundation no longer exists, then the property automatically reverts to the property owners from whom the land is being taken. The big problem, obviously, is that this will, in fact, run afoul of our zoning ordinances, because the land that is being donated is not sufficient for our minimum lot size requirements. So the path that this will follow is Madison County will administratively deny this. It will be appealed by this foundation or by the adjoining landowners. And when they do that, the Board of Zoning Appeals, because of the unique characteristics here and what we're trying to do, it is likely to pass at that stage. Of course, we do not control the Board of Zoning Appeals, but if I had to predict what would happen, that would be my prediction.
Ms. Long says they're a tough group. She's been with them for a while. You have any kind of time frame on this? I mean,
The disadvantage of the county not being in charge of this is we have no control over the time frame.
All right.
It's worth noting that this has been bouncing around for, I think, about 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. I am not aware of what funds have been raised or whether any funds have been raised. The key to this is going to be the contribution of the real estate. And my understanding is that all of the affected landowners are in agreement with this project.
all right, questions for Mr. Gregg on this? Anything else on this one? Hopefully it comes on soon. I'm working on it for a while.
So, Sean, who are they working with? Mark?
Bruce Clark at
Bruce
Clark and
Clark.
Walker.
Yeah, okay.
He's an exceptional attorney. Don't tell him I said that.
Yeah.
It's really going to be, the timetable is, ultimately, VDOT's going to have to say,
That's right.
because
Yeah,
they,
VDOT is also involved.
they've identified the funding, so the emails that kind of get pinged to us back and forth is what's the status? They found this funding, but at some point, that funding has to be the designator, if not, it will move on. So it's a process. As Sean said, we're somewhat bystanders. It'll get to us once they have it, determine these parcels, and then I guess the BZA would act if there was any action.
At the appropriate time, that's correct.
All right. Thank you for the update. No other old business. Let's go to new business. Grays Mountain Lodge permit application. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This came in recently. This is a company picnic for Inject that they are hosting at Grays Mountain Lodge. They had one of these recently, if you may recall, a member appreciation for REC. So this is for Inject. They anticipate 900 attendees. So again, anything that's above 750 attendees is a Category 2 event that requires board approval before I'm authorized to sign. Anything under that, our ordinance provides a Category 1, the zoning administrator could sign off. I have sent this to our Assistant Chief Emergency Management Coordinator, Chief Helm, to review this. They have not asked for any on-site or designated service. It's more making us aware, and I believe they're using the same map and layout plan as they did with REC. But Mr. Helm is here, should you have any questions.
Tell them anything to add? They've been doing this for years.
I don't have anything specific to add. I don't have any concerns either. They've not asked for any resources from EMS. I don't know about law enforcement. Maybe Mr. Weekly would know if the Sheriff's Department's been asked for anything.
Yeah, we have not been, and Alan, can you shrink that a little bit, please, so the general public? There has not been any request of resources. One of the reasons why I've asked Mr. Barry to shrink that, if you recall, the sheriff had a recommendation of putting an on-site emergency contact. Mr. Helm went in and modified that, so that is a new addition to our forms. But there was no request for dedicated service.
Yeah, we'll add it to our calendar at EMS just so that our people have situational awareness. But other than that, unless they make a specific request for services, again, no concerns.
All right. Questions, comments, thoughts on the motion? What would y'all like to do?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the event permit for Graves's Farm and Properties for the National Ground Intelligence Center picnic.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, Hoover Ridge Project Committee. Mr. Weekly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall, during your FY24 budget process, part of that included not only approving the FY24 budget, but the actual capital budget as well. Within the capital budget, there was money allocated, I believe roughly around $212,000 for engineering, design, and services of putting together a bid packet. I believe since that budget approval, having some conversations with Park and Recreation Authority staff, as well as I think maybe coming as a recommendation from the PRA board, is to form a formal committee, which would be known as the Hoover Ridge Project Committee. Their purpose would be of consulting, planning, and developing the project. That's not developing we're not out there with a mini excavator. That's developing the concept and projects. The committee would be tasked with working with the engineering firm, and I want the general public to be aware and remind the board that you have retained those services through an RFP a little over a year ago. So you have a couple firms under a professional service agreement you can select from if you wish. The committee would bring back all recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for approval. Again, the Parks and Recreation Authority has discussed this concept and have recommended to the county administrator that the Board of Supervisors consider approving this committee with the makeup of the following members, should you approve this committee, would be Jerry Carpenter, Lindsey Von Herbelis, Clarissa Berry, Kendall Fears, Chris Artali, Jennifer Warren, and Jonathan Weekly, whom I was suggested to me would be the clerk of the works for this project. This committee's standing, it would run until the completion of the Outdoor Recreation Center project. Once the project is complete, the committee will then be dissolved. So the recommended action from staff would be the board consider forming the Hoover Ridge Project Committee with the above referenced members, and which established Jonathan Weekly as the clerk of the works for this project. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have, unless you have any questions of me, sir.
The PRA board is eager to get this thing going, and it is something that's exciting. They have raised a substantial amount of money at this point. I think this is the right direction to go. Having Jennifer and Jonathan involved and all the other members, it'll keep it physically minded and kind of move us in the right direction. Cardi, what do you got to say?
No, I think this is the way to go as well.
There you go. What would anybody else have comments, thoughts? What would y'all like to do?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we authorize the formation of the Hoover Ridge Project Committee, made up of Jerry Carpenter, Lindsey Von Herbelis, Clarissa Berry, Kendall Fears, Chris Artelli, Jennifer Warren, and Jonathan Weekly, whom would be the clerk of the works.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. May has got to be like the one month of the year that we recognize just everybody. Wasn't it EMS week like last week, 2 weeks ago? It's this week. Congratulations, EMS, for having this week. We appreciate your service. We have a proclamation of National Police Week 2023. This was last week, I believe.
It was, and what I'll say I will, not putting others out there, is before the start of next year, we'll work with groups to identify in advance. The Sheriff's Office did make this request, and it's an honorable request. Proclamations is more about, this is my opinion, bringing awareness, obviously showing appreciation, but bringing awareness. I think the nation's capital, they had an event where they recognized that we have fallen officers, unfortunately, that exist. So we'll try to do a better job of bringing it in advance. National Police Week was last week, so this would be a retroactive approach. I've already talked to the sheriff about that. This proclamation was provided by them, so I think his office manager, Ms. Clatterbuck, so this would be retroactive.
This is the proclamation for National Police Week. The first line is to recognize National Police Week 2023 and to honor the services and sacrifices of those law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty while protecting our communities and safeguarding our democracy. What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we retroactively adopt proclamation for National Police Week 2023.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. All right. Emergency shelter grant update. Mr. Weekly?
So, and I'm glad to have
Next up.
Assistant Chief Helm with us here tonight because it's due his efforts. So, as you, that this grant we're getting ready to speak of, during the budget process, I know Mr. Helm has been working very firmly and consistently about obtaining some funding for generator. I believe funding, I don't know if the funding stream started last year, but were made aware of a cycle. As you may be aware, our small shelter operations or current shelter operations, should we need emergency shelter, which we did a couple of winters ago, is hosted, thankfully, at the fire department. We're thankful for the volunteers for making that location possible. Should we ever need, and I hope we never do again, a large-scale emergency shelter, the high school would be that point. So we applied through Mr. Helm for a grant to fund that generator. The grant was awarded to Madison County for $150,000. I believe there's like a 33 or 34% requirement local match. So of that, roughly 150,000, 49.5 would be the county's portion. So I believe we had 151 budgeted for this, and we're just thankful that we received the grant. The school has been in the know about this earlier on. We discussed this during our capital portion of the budget, and I just want to say kudos and hats off to our staff, specifically Assistant Chief Helm, for applying and bringing forth this grant award to Madison County. So hats off to you, sir.
Mr. Helm, anything to add?
No, I became aware of this grant last year. Unfortunately, I became aware of it about a week after it closed, so it was really too late to be able to do anything to participate in it last year. So it was on our radar screen to be ready for it. Thanks to County Administrator Weekly, he gave me the contacts at the school to be able to work with Stacy, and we came up with a plan to get the pricing to figure out what we would need to do at the high school to get a generator, and it turned out that it was cheaper to electrify use a generator for the entire high school than to try to just do the gym and some classrooms. So this will actually, in the event of a power failure, this generator will take care of the entire high school. The goal is not to replace the firehouse. It's still where social services prefers to work out of for a smaller shelter or a smaller emergency. What we want to do is start to be building a more robust shelter infrastructure if we ever did have another 1995, or God forbid something worse. There's a rule of thumb that a county should always look at being able to shelter about 10% of its population. That varies. You know, if you're in a big city, that number's probably about right. In a rural community, it's probably a little bit lower. Might even be higher in a city atmosphere. Either way, we're woefully not there now. So after the January 3rd storm, it kind of became my pet project to at least give us some more capacity within the county. So being able to do this with the high school, that and the fact that the primary school is also under generator, Once we get this going, then we'll look at some ways to have a portable trailer. We have some information coming from Orange County soon to see what they're doing with a couple trailers that are prepackaged, and you can deploy them whatever location you want. I'll be looking for grants for those as well. So we should be in a very good place for sheltering going forward. That's combined just with the lack of resources that are available with American Red Cross. As much as they're trying, the availability is just not there like it has been in years past. That's all I have.
So the asset, obviously, we're going to use this funding for that. The plan, but I'm informing you, so tell me if something different. The asset would then be transferred over to school, so naturally someone has to insure it, PM it, and all that. So it would go into their inventory. But again, it gives multiple flexibility for operations out there that we did not have in 1995. That 10% number becomes a very big number of staging people. But you have, a cafeteria, you have showers, you have multiple areas to spread people out, should that need arise, and we hope it does not. So, again, we're very appreciative. I put this forward, Gavin, because there's another grant on here I do not have good news for, but we're appreciative Madison did receive this grant, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions, comments on this? Thank you very much, Gavin. That should be something positive for Madison.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? All right, let's go to the, thank you for going with the positive one first. FY '23 Batty Grant update. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir. The board may recall we did a request for a proposal to solicit a internet service provider to be a co-applicant for the FY '23 Batty Grant. We had that process. Ultimately, Firefly was selected to be our ISP and co-applicant. We also were working with the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission. They've kind of been the conduit, if you will, between the locality and the Department of Housing and Community Development, which is the state agency that the state government has said will be the program administrator and facilitator for the VATI funds. We recently learned after the governor's press release that Madison County was not on that list. The state awarded roughly $59 million for various either authorities or localities. We were trying to get a meeting with DHCD along with Firefly and Thomas Jefferson Planning District just to kind of a lessons learned, if there is a lesson learned, our application, how did it score, why did it score that way, what are things we can improve on. But what this means ultimately, that VATI grant, that coverage area we were looking to help cover, and the Board of Supervisors pledged not to exceed $400,000. So you did put up some monies to go towards that because counties through any VATI grant are generally required to match 10%. So just like the VATI grant we were awarded, I think it was in 2022, known as the RISE project, and that's online. You can click broadband and look at that one. That was a $25 million project, and the county was responsible for $2.5 million, which the ARPA funds were designated for. So we were not lucky this round, and that means areas of Etland, Nethers, those areas we just talked about for radio coverage, they are left uncovered at this time until we can be successful. Really, if you live in that area, you say, what are my options? I talked to someone today that lives up there, and they said, well, we put our name on the waiting list 2.5 years ago for Starlink, and, that might be an option. But we're looking at, as the governor keeps talking about digital divide, this is a digital divide. Rural counties deal with this more so than I say urban areas. So we will keep at it. We will keep you informed of what we learn as staff. If there's a scoring lesson learned, and then, bring a recommendation of the next path forward. Broadband funding, we actually have, I'm going to be anticipating, I think it's a remote roundtable with Congresswoman Spanberger coming up in June. This is one area I submitted in advance. They asked if there are any topics in advance submit. I will be talking about. I recognize she is a federal representative, but hopefully through some abilities in her office, maybe we'll be fortunate moving forward in some capacity of getting that last remaining area of our county covered as they should, because that is a digital divide. So I'm sorry to report sad news on our VATI grant announcement.
Questions, comments on this one?
Hi, Mr. Weekly, this is Tracy, if I can say something.
Please.
Can you hear me? Galen Creekmore from Firefly did say this wasn't the end, that there are other grant funds they're looking into. So it's not necessarily the end of this particular part of the project. So that's all I have to add.
I appreciate that, Tracy. Yes, I believe it's BEAM or BEAD funding.
Beads, yeah.
Thank you. There's always acronyms, but, so we will continue to look at other options, because we believe we need to deliver broadband for all, which has been a supposed state and federal message. So we will continue to seek funding, and again, any lessons learned or any new opportunities, staff will bring that to the Board of Supervisors.
All right, other comments? Thank you, Tracy.
But
Anybody
just to be clear, on this VATI grant, we were in with Thomas Jefferson Planning District, so it wasn't just Madison. I mean, so we were hooked up with Albemarle, and I don't know, you know, maybe that we might find out that Albemarle was, right. That's what I'm thinking. I don't know.
Yeah. In some other areas, we've been linked to, like with the Brightspeed that was finally approved for the Wolftown Hood area. That was a CenturyLink challenged area, but that was recently resolved, I think, last month. So Brightspeed will be covering that area. And actually, their completion date is scheduled by December 2024. Everything awarded prior for the RISE project as a completion project, our timeline of August of 2025. So what's concerning of that, you're hearing me mention these lead times. If you're not in queue, which is that FY23 VATI area, then we have to get you in queue. We have to find funding. So that prolongs the timeline to obtain those broadband services. But very good point. We could learn that we were in with multiple counties that are not like as far as coverage, but we welcome any opportunity to learn why we did not make the cut and how we can next time.
All right, other comments, questions on this? All right, let's move on. Revenue sharing ordinance.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the current zoning ordinance for a commercial solar facility doesn't provide for a tax collection or a revenue collection method known as revenue share. The Code of Virginia allows for localities to either apply machinery and tools tax or revenue share as a method of revenue collection from commercial solar facilities. So you may recall a few years back, the county passed an ordinance for zoning for commercial solar facilities. So what this basically would do, if you want to consider it, and there's a public hearing set for June 7th at your joint meeting, and there's a draft revenue share ordinance in your packet. What this would give you is the ability to have another revenue collection method in your toolbox, if you will, as tax collection. State code only gives you those two options of revenue collection when it's pertaining to solar. So you either use a machinery and tool tax, which either method the state has set specifically what you can do. So revenue share is a straight $1,400 per megawatts. And on the machinery and tool tax, it starts out the gate as a high exemption rate. So again, if the Board of Supervisor ever wants to consider a revenue share as a collection method for any potential commercial solar facility, passing the ordinance would allow you to do so. Staff does not feel like that rubber stamps that you're going to use that method, nor would there be an application that could apply for that. But again, it's mainly giving you options in your revenue collection toolbox, if you will, to do so. There is a draft revenue ordinance. I believe the county planner has advertised for this. Mr. Berry, if you can scroll to the next page, please. That is what has been advertised, and I would like to bring council in on any thought or that they may have.
Mr. Gregg, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is kind of a loose end. You'll recall this issue first came up about 18 months, almost 2 years ago, And because we didn't have any actually pending applications or any interest, it kind of, nothing happened with it. This ordinance is based on an ordinance that has been passed, I believe, in Richmond County, Westmoreland County, and several other counties. Let me try to explain the benefit of this. One of the challenges with using the machinery and tools tax, and this, of course, is a decision for the board to make, not for me to make, but you have to account for depreciation. And as things depreciate, that means that the revenue stream from the machinery and tools tax would reduce. In fact, I believe Mr. Daniel told me that after 5 years, these things would be fully depreciated, meaning that, for the remaining life, which I understand would be another 20 years, we would not be able to collect a machinery and tools tax. Now, with regard to the revenue sharing arrangement, it is necessary, it's not perfect, because what's going to happen eventually, and again, this is why y'all make the decisions and not staff, what's likely to happen is there's going to be a glut of these facilities. And when that happens, utility providers are going to go to the cheapest source of power. And that may mean that a facility that is built in Madison County is taken offline for some period of time. In any event, the best way for us to have a chance to participate in this is to have this ordinance. Now, the advertisement is somewhat inaccurate in that and this has been an evolving situation in Richmond for the last 2 years. But if we pass a revenue sharing ordinance, the only way we could try to use the machinery and tools tax would be if we included language in a siting agreement with a potential applicant. So I think theoretically it could be done. At this stage, the financial analyses that I understand Mr. Daniel has done clearly indicate that the best way for Madison County to proceed with this will be with a revenue sharing agreement, understanding the caveat that this facility may not be at full capacity. I know that in any negotiations with regard to any siting agreements with these companies, we would look to protect the county to the extent possible in those agreements.
All right. Questions, thoughts, comments, Cardy?
Yeah, I've got, so $1,400 is what's in the state code right now, right? So what's the likelihood it's gonna stay at $1,400 for forever? In which case, I'm looking at, maybe we, instead of us saying we're gonna assess an annual revenue share of $1,400, that we're gonna say, we're gonna assess the annual revenue share of whatever's in accordance with the current Virginia code as amended, or something like.
Well, that would work. Now, remember the way that 58.1-2636 reads, it says
Yeah, I haven't read
1,400 per megawatt with an increase of 10% every 5 years. Now, and that is based on the state code. So I think it has already built that, what I'm gonna call inflation adjustment in the document.
The only concern I would have going into the state side of it is that potentially they would adjust down substantially, and then it would obligate us to go down with them. But I mean, we are a Dillon rule, so I mean, it would go that way anyway.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah.
And the output on these things declines every year.
The what?
The power output on these panels
Oh.
declines every year, 2 to 5%. So that's another offset that we'd have to consider.
Didn't the state also exempt 80%?
On the machinery and tools
Yeah.
tax, that is correct.
So, and then I'll throw it, I'm not real enthusiastic about this in any way. I'll make it very blunt. This is just a math problem. It's to collect the most money for the county. I mean, that really is, if we go down. But we need to have this as part of our arsenal, so that we can draw on it and try to get what the county is valued at, I guess.
I think the
What is it?
consensus, though, is that the state government and national government do not want localities making any money off
I think Sean Gray, this is the second time I've heard him talk about this. And it's not this specifically, but this idea. The idea that potentially these facilities could become dormant, based on the cost of generation of that power is a side in a comment that nobody has really brought up to this point. I mean, we've been talking about solar through, at least 2 different companies that have done stuff with us, and nobody is saying that at all. They're just assuming that they're going to continue generating at their maximum output, and I think that's an interesting point.
Well, and Mr. Chairman, to that point, I am aware of some contracts with other counties. This is one of the great things about the Local Government Association of Virginia. You have access to this. Many of their siting agreements have opt-out clauses. So some of these facilities, they have the right to build them, and they're choosing not to build them. Meaning, and they're basing, it's all based on, it's all market driven. We are fortunate to the extent that we are located in an area of the country that has a high demand for electricity. So it's less likely that, the market for this type of thing would dry up, in this area or, what I'm going to call the Mid-Atlantic region. But there are going to be parts of the country that have, gone down this path, and they're going to find that, the cost-benefit analysis just is not there. Nevertheless, this is a tool we can put in our toolbox.
All right, other comments on this?
No, I just think about Germany that went whole hog on solar, and for many months of the year, they actually have to pay people to take their electricity. They're generating such excess capacity. I'm not saying that would happen to us, but, going green has to be done smartly.
Like anything else. I absolutely agree with you. I've got 10 pet rocks. I was going to retire on them.
That's good. All right. I think it's amazing what the state has done with this. All right. We're good on revenue sharing ordinance. We're gonna have that on June 7th as well, so get ready. It's gonna be fun. All right. Late arrival, adding to the agenda, resolution 2023-6. This is an agreement between Orange and Madison, or a
Would you,
continuation. Yes, sir, I do.
and I've had Alan, I've popped this up on the screen so the general public can see this, and I will get an electronic copy to Ms. Long, who's doing our wonderful clerk work for us. Resolution 2023-6 you have before you. You may recall, as part of the withdrawal process of Greene County from RSA, Orange and Madison counties entered into a memorandum of agreement, and the initial term was supposed to run through June of 2027. However, there was a clause in paragraph 3 that stated if Greene County had not withdrawn on or before June 1st, 2023, which we're headed up on that date, that agreement would be void. So thankfully, our council, in consultation with Orange County's council, have come up with a solution that is basically keeping this agreement in full effect until such time as Greene County has withdrawn. Mr. Gregg or Mr. Wright, anything, gentlemen?
Very briefly, the biggest issue with this is, why is this taking so long? I'm delighted to report that this time it is at the state level rather than at the county level. The significance of it has to do with the State Corporation Commission. There is apparently this membership or seats on the State Corporation Commission have become a political football. Everything has been submitted. It was submitted in a timely fashion. We expected to have all of this signed off on back in March, and it did not happen. And the reason it did not happen is because the State Corporation Commission has to approve this. I spoke with Mr. Kalos, who represents Orange County on this matter, and he is guardedly optimistic that it is on someone's desk somewhere and that this resolution could become moot. In other words, it could be signed by the end of this week. But having this means we don't have to revisit the memorandum of understanding that was agreed to 18 months or so ago.
It's a good catch. We need to go down this path. Other comments on this? What would y'all like to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Resolution 2023-6.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we don't have any discussion, unless anybody got any discussion. All right, information and correspondence, VDOT updates. What's Ed say?
Just a few comments. Thanks to Supervisor Jewett. He and I both had a ride along. I always had a ride around it. Ride along along Route 230, Orange Road. We looked at several of those imperfections, if you will, the road. The criteria that they gave us as far as why it cannot be patched, a pothole has to be 1 inch by 6 inches in order for the patch to take. Their concern to us was currently the grading that they give a road each year determines when it would be put into a pavement schedule to be repaved. So they feel if they go in and grind down mill and repave portions to finish patching, that it would actually improve the grade of the road and therefore push it further out on the paving schedule. I don't believe I have any of that incorrect, sir.
That is the worst.
What?
That is the worst
You're
plan.
being just way too nice. Essentially, we were told that we need to let the road fall apart to move it up on the paving schedule, which I don't understand the logic, but that's what we were told. And the exception being that if there's a safety issue. Of course, that was being explained to us the whole time they're dodging holes on 230, so I don't know.
I did ask him
Doesn't make
point
any-
blank about the safety, because I've been behind specifically motorcycle traffic that move within the travel lane, and I was told by VDOT officials that it is safe. It definitely is noticeable, but we also traveled a couple additional roads, I believe Locustdale Road. That was interesting, some of those potholes in the center of the road. Pretty massive. You might lose farm equipment and passenger vehicles, but they assured us that that would be taken care of. We did ride River Road. I saw that as of March 9th. I watched that footage. I was unable for that meeting, but that was a request. I did not see anything visibly wrong with that road. It is possible somebody, either VDOT or someone with their own tractor and implementation, maybe have drug the road to help grade it, but I did not see any imperfections on that road. So those are my VDOT updates. Other than there was a right of entry. They make folks aware if VDOT needs to do some surveying or kind of coming on your property. The town of Madison apparently has a planned sidewalk project up near the Learning Center of adding some new additional sidewalk, but that sidewalk will be contained within their borders, so they have every right to do that. I just wanted to clarify with VDOT to make sure it was not pushing beyond town boundaries, to which it is not. And I believe Ms. Shepherd was here last month to report that they're looking to advertise now, maybe in October, for the R-Cut at Shelby. So those are my VDOT updates.
Well, I went up 230 Thursday towards Standardsville. They're patching up there, and that road is not a tenth as bad as going toward on.
Let me go to my VDOT paving schedule.
For, Jim? No, I figured that's the way it was. What did y'all ride for, several hours?
It wasn't that long.
I think they wanted to get rid of us quickly.
Then the Locustdale Road, then came out at Back Oak Park, went down 29 to the River Road, circled around and came back. And I mean, the local officials, they're trying. I mean, it's out of their hands what they can do.
It is,
But they were trying to explain the perverted logic of VDOT's road improvement policy. The other thing that really is frustrating, and it's not just in Madison, we're covered by 3 different districts?
Yeah, depending on where we're at, and I've got the paving schedule I want to discuss here in a moment on the screen. If you're out near Mr. Jewett and I's lovely part of the county, then Louisa District handles you. Between Gordonsville and Louisa, we have areas where Culpeper District, Charlottesville, so we're handled by various districts of VDOT. So I know they've encouraged us in the past, and I had Mr. Berry show you the link that we have for citizens to use the report system online. The problem is not all of our folks can get online here in the county to even report it. So, Ms. Hoffman, I brought up pertaining to your comment about 230 West. I believe that actually should be on their 2023 paving schedule. So sorry for these colors. These are their colors, not mine. What's in red, ignore. That was supposed to be the 2022 schedule. What's in blue is the segments of road for the 2023 paving schedule. So I see Route 230 East Wolftown Hood Road is, excuse me, that's east. Let's go up. Yeah, East Wolftown will be paved. Some of the other areas, I know Mr. Helm left, but out there on Ridgeview Road and some of those other areas will be paved as well. So if you ever rode out through Ridgeview, the whole length, Tib Shop Road and going out like towards Novum, they did what they call skin patching, or I call scab patching. They just roll this stuff out with a motor grader, and they say that's in prepping the roads for the pavement. So I believe I've forwarded this in the past. I'd be happy to do that again. It's a good reference material if folks are calling in or if you want to see what paving activity actually is going to occur. They are currently working on their 2024 paving schedule. That's why we are consistently bringing road issues to them, such as 230 Orange Road, to make sure that hopefully that can get paved sooner and not in the years 2025, between then and 2027. So that is the only current approved paving schedule that I have for Madison County through VDOT. So those are my VDOT updates.
Mr. Weekly, also they had stated that 230 had been on the schedule, but had then been pulled off of the schedule. And they weren't sure why. They were supposed to follow up with that.
That is correct. I have that as a follow-up, as well as additional follow-up. They do not have the safety report yet. That was requested for during that, yes, near Ayla Road and Route 231.
Any idea when that's?
I think they were going to start, I think maybe this week is what they have said, or hope to review that this week. When I listened to the meeting from the 9th, it sounded like it could take up to a month. So if that's the case, early June, we should be hearing something.
All right. Anybody else have other non-sarcastic comments about VDOT?
Since you put it that way now.
All right. VDOT's doing great. That's what I got from this. Reassessment proposal review, Mr. Weekly.
I wanted to make you aware that we issued a RFP for reassessment services. The county is due for a reassessment. Put that out. It was due back by May 8th. We had 3 responses, 3 proposals submitted. There was 4 total responses. The 4th one stated that they were unable due to their workload to submit a proposal. So we have 3 qualified proposals. We have formed a selection committee for the purpose of reviewing those proposals. Mr. Jewett was so kind to volunteer services, so it'll be Supervisor Jewett, as well as the Commissioner, Ms. Warren, Ms. Thacker from the Finance Office, also in Mr. Daniels' office, one of his deputies, Ms. Lowe, will be participating, and myself. So I believe we have interviews scheduled for the day of June 7th. I believe morning, we will have those interviews, and hopefully we can come away with a recommendation to bring to you at your first board meeting in June. So just want to make you aware of that and what we are tracking for our reassessments.
Everybody good? Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah, how many responses do you have? 3?
3.
Okay.
3
Good.
or 4 with 1 denial.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? All right, Rother case.
The Rother case, I know there's language in there about dismissal and prejudice, so maybe it'd be more proper to hand it over to our legal, but we do have an update on that.
Thank you, Mr. Weekly. The case has now been dismissed. Apparently what has happened is the applicant for the cell tower is worked with the Rothers about finding another site on the property. But as a result of that, the issue of the lawsuit is actually moot. The county was not part of that negotiation or any portion of it. Mr. Taves who was the county attorney handling that, because I had a conflict of interest, because I have a business relationship with the property owner. Long and the short of it, the lawsuit has been dismissed with prejudice, so we don't have to worry about that one anymore. It leaves us without any cell tower coverage in the Greater Uno area. And I know that has been a priority both from the emergency services perspective and from this board.
And we have notified VACOR of that recent ruling as well.
Anybody have questions for the update? Thank you very much. All right. Public comment. Public comment. Nothing. All right, public comments closed. We do have a closed session.
Yeah, I move that the board convene in a closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A1 for personnel, 2.2-3711A7 for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation, and 2.2-3711A8.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Thank you for sticking with us, Chuck.
Now stick out.
Yeah.
What's the matter? Your bones all?
This conference is no longer being recorded.